Okay, so from the standing on the ground, when you walk up to a tractor, some things you can check for very easily, just looking for wear in the clutch linkage. So starting up at the clutch lever itself, all the way down, we've got a bushing inside the bottom of the clutch lever. And this pin is also replaceable, which Steiner has, they've got the bushing and the pins new. Other points of wear also are the pins at the end of the clutch rod and the operating rod here, as well as another pin here. And you'll notice this one actually there's a little bit of lever, a little bit of play. At the end of the clutch lever, there's probably 6 inches of travel, which really is not that bad relative to a lot I've seen. A couple other areas to look for, at the end of the clutch rod here, there's always a clevis. There should be a jam nut up against the clevis. Sometimes you find that these are loose, have not maintained or been tightened over the years. What happens is the threads inside the clevis can wear out. So things to look for, and obviously that's a reassembly thing, but to check that we tighten this nut, keeping the rod tight in the clevis so that we don't damage those threads over a period of time. A couple other things to look for. A lot of times guys will want to rub the brake pulley groove. And this tractor actually has been maintained pretty well, but it's not uncommon to see deep scarring in the wear surface for your clutch pulley brake, due to just lack of maintenance or using one that's worn out and it metal to metal, and that's what happens. Not a huge area of concern. If you do have some really deep grooves and there's any damage, that might warrant replacement of the clutch pulley, but otherwise there's a lot of meat in here. Deep grooves are really not anything you have to be extremely concerned about. Later series tractors are going to use what they call the clip-on style clutch pulley brake, which is basically intended for quick replacement. Some of the earlier models used actually the lining riveted directly to the pulley brake arm. In this case, like I said, we'll be using the clip-on style pulley brake pad. A couple other things to check for. Is the pulley brake properly adjusted, or has it been properly adjusted? Does the clutch pulley stop? That's a tight clutch. Does the clutch pulley stop when you disengage the clutch, and does it stop the way it's supposed to? Other things I look for. So on a 720 and a lot of other Waterloo models, they use a clutch pulley cover that's made out of tin that clips on. It's held in place by 3 clips on the inside, which are riveted to the clutch pulley. There are a few models, such as the Model D and 8830R, and a few others that the cover is actually cast iron and you have to unbolt that to access the clutch. In this case, really all you've got to do is use a screwdriver. I like to use a screwdriver and a rubber mallet to remove this, and we'll get into that later, but here's an example of a clutch that's got a little bit more wear, just for reference, in terms of on the clutch pulley itself. You'll notice this clip-on brake pad is nearly deteriorated. It should be rather thick, and this one is not. So one of the first things you do, of course, if you're like me, you get on your hand clutch John Deere and you grab the controls, and I always check the play in the clutch. And the side-to-side movement, if there's more than, I'll say, an inch side-to-side up here at the handle, it's probably time to go and replace the bushing and or the pin where it pivots. Of course, you got a couple other spots for potential wear and play, and these little pins right here, one in the back and then one in the front where your clevis is, and we'll get to those here after a while. So something also kind of important to check before disassembling the clutch for repair is while the clutch is engaged, pull your lever forward and backward enough to see the end play in the crankshaft. And that's something you probably want to check per the operator's manual. But you can, if you had a micrometer or a digital dial indicator, you could check it that way. But if you're getting something like more than a 1/16 of an inch side-to-side play, you need to address that, as that can affect the way the clutch operates. Here's a quick word about inspecting your linings and just sort of knowing what to look for and figuring out if it's time to replace your linings and or your discs on your John Deere 2-cylinder tractor. The factory service manuals actually say to check the single discs, and if you can bend them at all, which this one I cannot, but if you can bend them at all, they should absolutely be replaced. Inspect the clutch drive disc. If it is cracked and the splines are worn, replace it. And in this case, you can see I can turn the disc. At the edge of the disc you can probably get 3/8 of an inch of turn. Obviously this is loose. Something else you'll notice, if you have a rattle in your clutch at idle speed with the clutch disengaged, it's very likely that you may have worn splines on your sliding and your clutch driver. So something to be looking for. The service bulletin also says inspect clutch facings for badly glazed or oil-soaked surfaces. If either condition is found or if the linings are broken, replace them. Facings in good condition are quite rigid. If they bend appreciably, facings are in poor condition and should be replaced. So that sort of gives us an idea of when is a good time to replace the clutch. If your clutch has been slipping, I've certainly seen some oil-soaked clutch facings that don't help that whatsoever. You might get by trying to use carburetor or brake cleaner to remove some of the oil from those linings, but it's very likely that the oil has soaked in, and in all honesty, you probably need to track down the source of the oil and replace the linings after you've figured out where the oil is coming from and stop the oil from getting inside your clutch where it should not be. So those are a few tips as far as what to look for when assessing the condition of your clutch. Here we are looking at a 1952 John Deere B, and specifically illustrating the differences in the clutch mechanism and the way it operates, and just a few differences. So as compared to the 720, which we were using actually for our disassembly demonstration, note it's much shorter clutch lever itself. So for some folks, if you really set the clutch the way the service manual would suggest, it might be a little tough. So for a parade tractor, you probably wouldn't want to adjust it quite as tight. This is a clutch that's actually been completely overhauled with new pins and bushings. So really the whole 9 yards in that sense. You'll also note a little bit different style yoke than what we see on our 720, but still important to keep that nut tight to save the threads in the yoke. You'll notice here there is some differences in terms of the clutch pulley brake arm. This one here is actually to return. You'll notice a piece of wire on there after having machinists do some work on the clutch pulley brake arm itself. It did not want to return away. After you'd engage the clutch, it didn't want to return and go back away from the clutch pulley. So that's a temporary measure, but it works like anything else. This is something different to notice. This clutch actually had the quick detachable clip-on style. You can see the outline right there, the old rust, if you will, where it was on there, and I chose to go back with the original using the rivets and rivet on a clutch pulley brake lining, which works just fine. So those are just a few little differences. The way there's really very little adjustment for the stop on the pulley brake itself. Really just adjust how quickly it engages the clutch pulley to stop it and slow it down. So just a few differences, the numbered series versus lettered series.